the truth, Charlie.
This is Stu Webb, federal whistleblower, the new host of Veterans Today Radio News Reports, Monday right here on Revolution Radio. My guests are writers and contributors to VeteransToday.com, the number one alternative media magazine in the world and the true voice of the world's clandestine community. We will be discussing recent articles that deal with government corruption, politics, military, Illuminati, and world events that affect your lives and what you can do to change the direction of America. So tune in to the Veterans Today Radio News Reports every Monday evening from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on Studio B here on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Thank you.
Coverage? Oh, you mean them little root weevils that crawl around popping off cameras in your face?
And those root weevils write history.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here, Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays, midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
Would be me, Wild Bill Samsel, your host of the Samsel Report. Join me for Wild Bill's Headline Roundup every Saturday night, right here on Revolution Radio.
Enjoy your extra big-ass fries.
You didn't give me no fries. I got an empty box.
Would you like another?
Extra big-ass fries.
I said I didn't get any.
Thank you. Your account has been charged. Your balance is 0. Please come back when you can afford to make a purchase.
No.
I'm sorry you're having
trouble.
trouble.
Come on. My kids are starving.
Thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio. Here at Revolution Radio, we believe in freedom of ideas, freedom of speech, but above all, we believe in freedom of existence through self-reliance. This station is 100% listener-supported, and as a fundraising promotion, I have a kick-ass free gift for a $100 donation. 35,000 seeds. 25 years in the freezer. Long-term storable, 54 different varieties. So if food prices go crazy, the shit hits the fan, or if you just want to save tons of money every year by creating your own food like I do, grab our seed pack special. Just look for the banner on the homepage at freedomslips.com. Don't be a statistic. Don't be part of the problem. Be part of the solution. We need, as humans, to start taking care of ourselves and not depending on the megacorps to provide unhealthy, nasty food. Included in this package is also a DVD with 900 survival and off-grid living documents and the offline home canning how to do everything website all on the DVD. So when you're growing all that food, you know how to can it, store it, preserve it, etc. with all these documents. So thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I hope that you will pick up this package and start learning to be free. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps and freedom is one seed that needs to be planted.
What we do in life, it goes in eternity.
From the corrupt corridors of Wall Street to the lords of the City of London. From the gold markets of the Pacific Rim and the Far East comes the Guerrilla Economist. He clears the fog of economic and geopolitical disinfo. Know the truth, see the trends, understand the players. Protect your future and family. The financial freedom fighter, a rebel with a cause. This worldwide transmission has been brought to you by the Guerrilla Economist, helping the world understand, prepare, and make sound decisions to protect your future and your family. Visit the Guerrilla Economist at roguemoney.net, spelt ROGUEMONEY.net, for additional information and services. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
All right, folks, welcome back. It is Sunday, September the 28th, 2014, and I am the infamous Guerrilla Economist on the airwaves right now live on freedomslips.com. Folks, we are a listener-supported radio station. Over the dozens and dozens of programs here on Freedom Slips, every single one of these programs are here because folks like you make it happen. So if you love the programs that you're hearing, you love my program, you love Sean Morton David and Deacon John and all the other wonderful hosts that are on this station, please click that donate button. You can go to freedomslips.com/support, and you can support programs like us. Remember, we're not funded by some mega corporation here. We're on the front lines of bringing you information, of bringing you the type of news and entertainment that you guys enjoy. And that's a great thing. I mean, it's wonderful to be on a radio program where every 5 minutes there's not a commercial break where some guy's trying to pitch you some sort of a ridiculous product, male enhancement or nasal sprays or anything like that. Okay, you're getting great info. We only have like 2 little commercial breaks, which in the grand scheme of things is absolutely nothing. Okay, so what we're doing here is awesome. And we run a very tight ship. That being said, the cost of running a radio station is tremendous. There's all sorts of servers and equipment and load-bearing servers and everything that needs to get taken care of. So go ahead and click that donate button on the screen. Also on the chat room box right there, it says donate. You can click on that as well. And the website is freedomslips.com/support. And, this way you guys can go ahead and support us. That being said, I just want to bring you guys all back to another wonderful week. Last week's show was exciting. We had a lot of responses to that business offer that we've put out there. I want to thank everybody for signing on board and to continue to sign on board with Carrot Bars International. It is a great way and a great exploit for you to have the average person, the average Joe and Jane on the street. It's one of the exploits you have against the banking cabal and the banksters in general. It allows you to be like them in the sense that operating outside of the system without absolutely no third-party counter risk. That also being said, I'm just going to go ahead and we're going to have a guest on today. He's going to be calling in a couple of minutes, in about 8 minutes or so, or 7 minutes or so. It's Greg Morse. Greg's become a very good friend of mine, and his background, he's an ex-fighter jock from the Vietnam War. He flew one of my favorite planes, the F-4 Phantom, over North Vietnam. He was a fighter ace, and then he went on and he was famous, or infamous if you would put it, for being one of the key individuals for discovering the SNL scandal back in the 80s. And discovering that scandal and having Greg's maverick attitude and his perception on the way things are in the world, he also uncovered back in 2007 or 8 the mortgage crisis and the mortgage scandal that we're currently facing as a nation. What Greg is going to show you and share with you today is a culmination of over 7 years of hard, intensive research that he's funded with his own money. The guy has spent at least over $1.5 million out of his own pocket to make this information readily available, and the stuff that he's pulled out and pieced together, he's run it by me, and I can tell you, weeks ago when he ran every single bit of data by me, and me and him were on the phone for hours on end, I can tell you straight up that his information is 1,000% credible. I validate it. There's a handful of guys on Wall Street and in the City of London that know about it, and they can vouch for it as well. Folks, you're going to learn tonight that you do not own anything. You're going to learn tonight that what you are, I mean, some of you have an idea of the grand illusion that we're all living in, and tonight you're going to understand what that's all about. So we're going to get deep into the deception, so to speak, so that Greg Morse will be on in about 5 minutes. So covering some important news of the week, look, I don't need to go through the string of bad stuff that keeps happening. Syria, Middle East getting flared up again, and then Ferguson, Missouri gets flared up again. It's like all these things are basically like hemorrhoids that keep flaring up and that don't seem to go away anywhere. Okay. Another important discovery or event has occurred. This is along the same vein as sanctions against Russia. Well, it turns out that Russia discovers a massive Arctic oil field which may be larger than the Gulf of Mexico. In a dramatic stroke of luck for the Kremlin, this morning there is hardly a person in the world who is happier than Russian President Vladimir Putin, because overnight state-run OAO Rosneft, if the folks that don't know, Rosneft is the largest oil company on planet Earth. They're about 2.5 times bigger than ExxonMobil. Okay, so Rosneft has announced that it has discovered what may be a treasure trove of black oil, one which could boost Russia's coffers by hundreds of billions, if not more. When a vast pool of crude was discovered in the Kara Sea region of the Arctic Ocean, showing the region has potential to become one of the world's most important crude-producing areas, arguably bigger than the Gulf of Mexico. The announcement was made by Igor Sechin, Rosneft chief executive officer, who spent 2 days sailing on a Russian research ship to the drilling rig where the find was unveiled today. Folks, if this does not get any better for the Russians and any worse for the United States, I don't know what does. Now, here's the deal. The discovery of this oil is very key. It plays into the whole Eurasian trade zone. It solidifies Russia as the oil or energy kingpin on planet Earth from now into the foreseeable future. It puts the United States in a very, very bad predicament, making the jackal that has been wounded, which is the United States, all the more desperate to do things to stay relevant. You kind of think that these morons who run the country would think to themselves, maybe we shouldn't be so aggressive. Maybe we should start playing nice with others. Maybe we should start doing mutually beneficial trade agreements. Maybe we shouldn't bomb everybody to the Stone Age. Maybe that's not a good idea. Maybe we should actually do things like develop infrastructure. Maybe we should actually get rid of the cronyism that's in government. Maybe we should just stop the corporatism that we've been doing for the last 40 some odd years and writing it off and trying to convince the world we're actually capitalistic, when in reality we're not. Maybe we should really start changing how we are as a nation and begin to look into ourselves and create the necessary catalysts for change. But of course, the guerrilla's words will go unheard and will fall on deaf ears as the current maniacs, because they are deaf, dumb, and stupid and are only concerned about procuring and securing the next election victory, they don't care about long term, folks. That's the problem. That is a problem. Another major news, one of my favorite bond fund guys, in the world, Bill Gross, famous Bill Gross, who is the CEO of PIMCO, and if people don't know about PIMCO, that's Pacific Investment Management Company. PIMCO was the largest bond fund on the planet. Bill Gross has decided he is leaving Exit stage right, the $2 trillion bond firm that the man has pretty much created from scratch, all by himself, and shaped and festooned it to be the behemoth that it is today. Bill Gross is leaving. This doesn't settle well with me because one of the things that Gross is holding, here's the funny thing about PIMCO. PIMCO is a massive company, but it is the holder, the largest private holder of U.S. Treasury notes, U.S. bonds, U.S. debt. So I find it absolutely hilarious that the number one thing you have is the most toxic asset on planet Earth. Maybe that's why Bill Gross jumped ship. I will find out for you folks later on as the week progresses. Other than that, I am working on a major article for Rogue Money, which will be out. A lot of juicy bits of information have come forward, such as I'm going to detail for you folks. I'm going to detail for you folks exactly what happened with the Blackwater mercenaries that have been caught in Ukraine, and we're going to discuss that a little bit during the week on RogueMoney.net. And folks, if you haven't signed up to RogueMoney.net, I recommend that you do. I will be back to my usual postings of 2 to 3 articles per week, if I can, which I will be in the end of October. But join RogueMoney.net. It's only $2.99 a month. It is the best frontline, bleeding edge financial news magazine on the planet. Please join that site. Support the Guerrilla and all the staff there at Rogue Money. With that being said, I have our guest on the phone, the incomparable Greg Morse, my wingman, my good friend, and confidant. A great human being, by the way, folks. If anybody had the pleasure of meeting with Greg, Greg is he's one of the most honest, straightforward guys I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. And when we get together and we talk for hours. There's so much knowledge in this man's head, and it's going to be a special treat for you folks to listen to Greg, because I'm just going to unchain him and let him go free. Greg, are you on the phone?
Yes, I am, V. Hi.
Greg, welcome aboard, sir. I already set everything up for the audience. So they know your background. They know what we're going to cover. We're going to cover the illusion of the stock market and then the bond market and the mortgage scandal, and basically everything that's in your head right now, Greg. I just want you to just open up your head and just squeeze out every bit of information and bathe the audience in this deluge of knowledge, sir. So the floor is all yours, Greg.
Thanks, V. It's nice to be here. Well, that's quite a task because there's so much to talk about. Let me try to set the stage if I can. The thing that is so frustrating to those of us who have been involved in this process for as long as we have been, which is upwards of 6 years now, the frustrating part of this, V, as you and I have talked about so many times, is that it's almost like we feel as if we're standing out in the middle of the forest yelling at the owls or something and nobody's hearing us. To me, this information is probably the singularly most important piece of information that the American public needs to be aware of and then engage and act upon. There's so many things going on in our country, as you so exquisitely outline all the time on Rogue Money and all of your various interviews and platforms. There's so many things going on that we as individual American citizens don't really have the ability to fight. We can't go in and solve Benghazi. We can't solve the problems in the Ukraine. You can talk until the cows come home. There are so many things that we as individual American citizens have no functional ability to affect the righting of the wrongs. It makes people, I think, I'm guessing, but I believe the psychology behind that, with my background in asymmetric warfare and the intelligence game, is that people just get frustrated and they go, I can't do anything about it, therefore I'm going to listen, but then I'm going to turn my mind off and go back to football or some other dadgum expenditure of time. The issue here that I'm trying to get out, and bless your heart for helping us, is that I want people to realize that what we're talking about, they are able to get involved and they can assist in basically being their own private whistleblower to get this information out, because if we're successful in being able to do that, we can have a measurable effect on all of the corruption and the fraud that has been perpetrated on America and on its citizens. That's why I was asked by people in Washington and other places soon after 2008's bust took place, because of my involvement in uncovering the S&L, in part my contribution in uncovering the S&L debacle back in the mid-'80s, was that nobody could figure out what really happened or how it happened or who was behind it. And it's really nothing more than a great big research erector set of facts. And I think we have a problem. I'm going to be real honest. I don't want to offend anybody. And what I'm hoping is that the factual nature of what we talk about will motivate all of the listeners to the Guerrilla Economist show to really stop, look themselves in the face, in the mirror, and get involved. My experience after interviewing 7,000 plus people who have contacted me over the last 6 years regarding their mortgage problems and stock issues and all the rest of it is that people seem to take the icing, not even the entire layer of icing on the top of the cake, but they seem to they skim just the top of the top layer of icing off the cake. They're satisfied with that because it's all sweet. They get little input of what they think is fact, and they stop looking deeper into the cake to see, is it really a cake or is it a time bomb? Well, that analogy serves my point of saying that this is a huge time bomb wrapped in very sweet-smelling, sweet-tasting icing. Now, if people were to take the time to just learn 2% of the entire story, you don't need to know the other 98% to accept and realize and acknowledge the fact that something is drastically wrong in this country. It's kind of like a constellational anomaly. You look up in the sky and you see a whole bunch of things flying around and you think they're this or that or the other. It doesn't matter. You may not know the answer as to what's causing those flashes of light and trails across the sky, but you know that they're there. So what I'm supposing here for everyone's consideration is that you don't have to know to a finite degree of technical specificity exactly what happened at every step in the process. But when you put A and B together and you keep coming up with a different letter other than C, you can conclude factually that you are no longer on the sequential outlining of the alphabet, because it goes ABC. And if it goes ABQ or ABF, you know something's wrong. Now, what's happened here in this situation is that for decades, started way back in the 70s with the founding of the original MERS Inc., which is nothing more than a shell company, Mortgage Electronic Registration Systems Inc., which is nothing more than a shell company. It has 3 boards of directors living in 3 different states. It's a facade. They're a Delaware company, means nothing. But that's where the process started. That was the shill entity under which the design of the system, which led to the mortgage crisis, which exploded in October of 2008. That's where it began. Now, for years, many of us had erroneous, unfactual, not evidence-corroborated opinions about what happened in this problem. Now, let's kind of put a little tweak on the setup here. And unfortunately, there's no way in the time we've got we can cover all this, because the massive amounts of volume of information are so huge. There's no way we can cover it all. But let's try to get people to the point where they can accept for the first time maybe that what they have thought happened and why they're in the problems they're in, or their mothers, their fathers, their brothers, their family members, their friends are in, is wrong, and they need to relook at this. Our country has, as you are more than anybody I know well aware of, people in our country have a tendency, because of the mind control that's been perpetrated on everybody for decades and decades, is that there could be a major story on Monday, and by Wednesday afternoon, they've completely forgotten about it, and they're on to the next major story as given to them by the lamestream media. This is not one of those events that we as Americans can allow to be treated in a similar fashion. We have to look at this and say, unless we rise up as American citizens, there is no chance that we're going to stop, and cure this problem. Now, this has been a 30-year construct, and for many years, people felt, the mortgage crisis, people felt that this was an anomalous event that was unrelated to anything else in the financial economic paradigm. It's totally wrong. The mortgage crisis of 2008, in terms of being a predetermined, manipulated construct, is no different than the dot-com problem, the LIBOR problem, the gold and silver manipulation problem. They all are in the same paradigm. They simply have different parts and pieces assembled, sometimes in a more similar than others way, to result in control of unknowing people. And that's what happened here. Now, the stock market, when we first started this investigatory process in late 2008, November, December timeframe, we didn't really assume, consider, or even think that the stock market and its corruptive construct were even a part of the mortgage crisis. It took all these years and thousands of man hours and tens of thousands of pages of public obtained corroborative court admissible evidence to finally wake me up and others involved to say, wait a minute, we're missing the boat here. We're shooting at the duck and we're trying to hit the deer. One flies, one walks. We're shooting at the wrong target here. So when we got deeply into the investigation of the stock market's history in this country, both prior to and subsequent to Jekyll Island in 2013, with the foundation of the Fed, all of a sudden, all the lights in the dark room came on, and you could see that you were no longer at the level of a constellational anomaly. You're actually looking at the real facts. The mortgage crisis and all of the parties involved were nothing more than the same, almost point-for-point construct of the way the stock market system on Wall Street has operated since the day of its inception, although, of course, it's been refined and made more powerful and more dark and more heinously bad for the people who play in it, more destructive. But it's the same basic construct at a foundation level, almost point for point. What do I mean by that? We're doing it for nefarious reasons. We're doing it to, these are the people that run and control J.P. Morgan, Deutsche Bank, Credit Suisse, and the lawyers that support them. Not to mention the City of London and everybody, DTCC and C, that we'll hopefully at least touch on a little today. Their goal was to take control of the money, the land, the assets, and the psyches of the people who are in the mortgage industry, i.e. you owned a home or a condo or something on which a mortgage existed. Their plan was to manipulate the market by manipulating the psyche of the home buyer, by saying everybody should have a home, we got no doc loans, and all the various goofy things that they perpetrated on the American society to get people to enter the second set of 50 states that exist in this nation. Yes, we don't have 50 states. yes, we do have 101, with the odd man out being Guam in our Puerto Rico in a couple of instances. You have the state that is the original state that is a part of what is supposed to be our union of our constitutional republic. Then on the other hand, and simultaneously, you have the state of entity, which is the commercial corporate entity of every single state in the union. So let's make it simple and say it's 50 times 2 for 100 entities. To be able to pull this construct off, you have to get people going. It goes back hundreds of years, as you well know, steeped in the history of the way our laws have come to be developed. You have to get people to voluntarily, that's a key point, enter themselves into the commercial world of contracts. Now, once you do that, you have put yourself, in most cases, 99.9999 to the infinite decimal point degree, you have given up effectively any of your constitutional rights without doing what we're doing. Federal court, in 4 different courts in 3 states, whistleblower, and make a big stink out of it and take on a lot of risk without going to court. You've basically effectively, practically given up your constitutional rights, because now you've entered into the world of the commerce-based, contractually driven, administrative court world that is controlled by a corrupt judicial system and all of the lawyers who are, I'm not saying all of them, but a large percentage of them all are members of the country club, such that they have to play the game to maintain their bar membership, to stay involved and not get blackballed because they raise too much stink. Am I halfway on point so far?
You're right on target, Greg. You're absolutely right.
Well, that construct's been in place for a long time. And as the years and the decades go by, that construct becomes deeper, broader, taller, and stronger, to the extent that the American people consistently listen to the lamestream media. They watch football and all these other mind-numbing events, and I'm not against football. I played it through college, so I love the sport, but it was for a different reason. We didn't have all of this mess that's going on today. But the point of it is, I don't care if you concentrate on fishing or football or flying kites, if you don't spend any time studying and learning and doing your contributory part of trying to help us reestablish the Union, our constitutional republic, not a democracy, our constitutional republic, then you are no different than a person who voluntarily is willing to let others control you and walk yourself to the gas chamber. Now, that's what's happening in America today. The single, I guess I'd modified my words a little bit. I used to say, and in my heart I still believe this, but practically I may need to change my words a little bit. My old statement was, I think that the mortgage crisis is the single biggest threat to the continuation of the existence of something that even remotely looks like what our founding fathers and our 3 founding documents call for as being a constitutional republic. I'm going to change that and modify it slightly to say, because I think it's technically more accurate, because certain people say, are you telling me that a nuclear war with some opposing country is of less import? Yeah, I get their point. No, that's not what I mean. So the way I'm going to modify that statement is to put it thusly. I think it is the single most important financial calamity in which we all have the opportunity to have a significant impact on and effect to the curing of this problem. Now, if we were to do that as a nation, with people like you leading the knowledge campaign to get people to be aware of what's really going on, then what happens is we use this not as a fallacious mental construct that says if we fix the mortgage problem, everything else is repaired. No, that's not what I'm saying. If we were to absolutely rise up by the millions, 2, 3, 4% of the nation, and say this is not going to continue, what that does in effect is that, in my mind's eye, is tantamount to pushing over the first domino, and that one falling over that one domino brings down the other 10,000 dominoes that have been aligned accordingly. Because if we can stop this problem and start bringing people to the courts in a legal, nonviolent way to be able to uncover this corrupt cabal and start making people be held responsible, my gut tells me that is going to shed light on many of the other problems in which we don't really have as individual citizens or even in small massed groups that we don't now have the ability to do anything with. Once we were to develop enough momentum of recognition about the mortgage problem, my guess of it is that it would shine light on a lot of these other problems. Now, what happened in the mortgage crisis specifically is that it was directed, and the recipient of the benefits of that direction all landed on the doorstep of the Depository Trust Clearing Corporation at 55 Water Street in Wall Street. Now, it took years to figure that out. It took a lot of documents to get to the point where that statement could be made and be factually accurate. But here's what happened. An entire industry of mortgage companies, title companies, law firms, and yes, courts, were assembled in advance such that these fraudulent mortgage transactions could be conducted and then torn apart, and the action of tearing those transactions apart could be covered up, and the factual knowledge of what really took place could be kept from the affected homeowner and the rest of the American public. They do that with typical asymmetric warfare tactics of pointing fingers at people that aren't involved, making claims that the American citizens were stupid and they went out and bought too big a house, didn't have enough money to pay for it. Yes, of course, there are sporadic examples of that, sporadic meaning percentages of the total, not numeric, percentage totals. And by throwing enough garbage at the American public, they don't know what to believe. And the average American will not take the time, because of their normal life's complexity, to look at and study and investigate why the pieces of the puzzle are not making sense. People will jump on the issue of a broken chain of title, and they'll write books and they'll have stories on that as if that's the entire problem. No, the chain of title breaking is a huge part of the process. I'm not demeaning that or trying to minimize that in any way. Here's the point. The breaking of the chain of title is a resultant effect of the establishment of the criminal cabal. Now, once that happens, and once you can prove that your chain of title has been broken, there is a U.S. Supreme Court precedent that is referred to as Carpenter v. Longan, Longan, which says that once the deed of trust and the promissory note are separated, both become nullities. Well, in legal jargon, what that means is they're of no force and effect, they're not enforceable, and you, the homeowner, then fall into the category of possession is 9/10 of the law. You live in the house, the legal documents that underwrite and theoretically encumber you with the repayment of a fraudulent mortgage that you may or may not be aware of as being fraudulent, those documents vaporize and you own the house free and clear. So everybody says, yay, if I can prove that my chain of title was broken, then I'll get my house free and clear. That will right the wrong. I will no longer have any debt on my house, and they'll fabricate 1,000 things. Here's where that construct fails. The courts aren't supporting it. The courts, with their lawyers, are supporting the perpetration of the extenuation and the continuation of the fraud by not following the law. Now, there have been a few exceptions. I will not call them notable because when you get into the cases in which the outcome is different than what I just outlined, if you read, and of course each one of those processes is a 6, 8, 10, or 12-hour evolution, to actually read what the facts say and what the judge wrote in his order, that in the few cases where the homeowner has won, meaning they either got a quiet title or they had already been kicked out of their house, but they won the case, they were given monetary remuneration in the form of damages after the fact, regardless, it doesn't matter. It all comes down to money. And the point of it is that when you read those cases, here's what you find. Now, I'll make an oblique statement here and say, in all the thousands of cases we've studied, we have not found one exception, all the way to the Supreme Court of the state of Washington, Texas, and the Supreme Court of the United States. We have not found one exception to this. Here's the statement. The statement is that in every single one of those cases that we have been able to locate, to research paper and actual business to the court, to define where these wins were located, they were all non-legal, factual-based anomalies. They were based on someone missing a deadline. They were based on something being written in a legally linguistic ledger domain way that wasn't clear to the judge. It was on a technicality. It wasn't because the judge said, we have uncovered massive amounts of fraud. You people are criminals on the bankster side. And therefore, based in law and based in the proving of your criminal behavior, and in a civil case, of course, all the judge can do is say, you're guilty of fraud. That then becomes, if there wants to be criminal prosecution, that has to come from a DA. But the point is this, we haven't found one, not one, out of the millions of cases that have been filed since 2008 and a couple of years before that on a much more minor scale. We've not found one single case where the plaintiff was the homeowner who had been taken advantage of that eventually won the case. Now, I'll admit that we haven't, because of the massive number of states, corporate states, and the massive number of cases that have been put into, instigated in, begun in state courts, and then immediately dismissed. There's tens of millions of them, and there's no way we can look at those. But the federal cases stand out like a sore thumb. Because in the federal cases, not one of those judgments rendered or final disposition orders in a federal case said that the homeowner won because the other side, the banksters, had committed fraud and broken the law. It's being covered up by the judge.
That's unbelievable.
Not one.
That's incredible. And folks, if that doesn't, I mean, let's just recap what Greg is saying. This is massive fraud and cover-ups and criminal collusion on every single level. Okay, we a lot of the listening audience understands, okay, that there's corruption in the system. Oftentimes, folks, you guys can get, kind of overwhelmed, so to speak, like what Greg sort of earlier, in terms of the grand scheme of things. Like, you can't change Benghazi. You can't change what's going on in Ukraine. But even though, Greg, there's all this massive corruption, this is one of the few exploits, probably the only major exploit that the average person can take advantage of to start reversing and affecting change within the system, number one. And number two, it's a situation that affects every single person who lives in the United States. I mean, come on. You might not, what's the word I'm looking for? You might not relate to Benghazi. You might not relate to Wall Street and the stock market, but you could relate to having a roof over your head. And that's what Greg's trying to do here, folks. Greg, that's amazing, amazing information. What else have you found out about that?
Well, the problem is that, and I know we're not talking about dozens of specific facts yet. We can certainly do that as much time as you want to spend in as many episodes on your show as you think deems appropriate. That's your call, of course. But the fact of the matter is, I've come after talking to 7,000 irate men, women, married couples, families, and jillions of lawyers who don't know what they're doing. Quite frankly, they're real good at Hollywood theatrics, but they're not good at standing up for their clients. And I'm sure many of your listeners who have delved into this area probably can write books on their bad experiences. What we find is this. If we are to come together, we uncovered a part of the Racketeer Influence Corrupt Organizations Act that people refer to as RICO, R-I-C-O, in Section 1964. Now, Section 1964, I've had major New York Wall Street law firms contact me and say, you're a nutcase because you are suing some of our defendants, our clients, because banks, and title companies, because you can't sue for damages under a criminal statute. And I will refer them to the section and the page number and what has happened without exception. Those people have either called me back, sent an email, or otherwise communicated with me that they had been in practice for 30 years and didn't even know it. Section 1964 of the RICO statute, which with all of its underpin writings and the rest of it is about 800 to 1,000 pages long, it specifically gives you the right as an American citizen to file a RICO lawsuit, which is, yes, it's a criminal statute. But when you file it under Section 1964, what it says in layman's terms is this. If you can prove that you have been damaged as an American citizen, and if the source of that damage came from criminal acts which violated the RICO statute, then you have the ability to do two things. You can receive civil damages for that, and it opens up the palette, the painter's palette, and in my case, I've got about 6 or 7 different types of damages for which I qualify if we can ever get these judges to actually hear the case. I qualify for 6 or 7 different types of damages, which in a non-RICO case, you do not have the legal ability under the federal rules of civil procedure and all the rest of it. You don't have the ability to qualify for. So here's what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting that if people really care, as you say, about having a roof over their head, and they don't like the idea of being a victim of peonage, Peonage. Now, that claim is one of the major foundation rock claims in my federal lawsuit, which people apparently now are, I'll let you address that, but apparently people are aware of it, and they're becoming ever more concerned about it because they've not been able to dismiss us or get rid of the shit. And I'm doing it pro se. I'm doing it pro se. I'm not doing it with any lawyer. So
Greg, let me just address that real quick when you just touched upon, the people being aware of it. Folks, let me tell you something. Greg, this is what, I don't know, call it an act of God that Greg and my path crossed, okay? When Greg came on the scene, I've heard of him. I listened to him on Doug Hagman's show, and I was pretty amazed by what this guy discovered. I mean, I was thinking to myself, my God, the majority of people don't know what this guy's talking about is the actual truth. And over the course of time, with all the filings that Greg has done in multiple courtrooms, and even right here in the Southern District Court in New York, in Manhattan, people did not realize the severity of this. Greg began to rattle some serious cages to the point, folks, that there are key individuals in Wall Street, in the higher ups and the ladder rungs in the city of London, that he is causing these people to say, okay, this guy is a troublemaker. This guy needs to go away. So, folks, it's important for you to link up your arms with an important mission like with what Greg is doing, and be involved on this, because the last thing these guys want to do is let you, the public, know what's going on, because it's going to be like a bunch of roaches scurrying as soon as somebody turns on the kitchen light. They don't want to turn the lights on, and Greg is the one who is, and the work that he's done is the very thing that's turning on the lights. Now, why is this important? And most people, Greg, don't even get this. The work that Greg is doing with the mortgages, folks, it ties into the stock market. It ties into the bond market. Okay? So Greg's investigation, so to speak, is the nexus. His work is the nexus on which all these things spin. In other words, it's the cornerstone. If they get a knock, if they get some serious blowback because of this man's research, excuse me, in the mortgage market, in real estate, the blowback will be so severe it will bring down the entire house of cards. Now, this is what I'm talking about. You want to affect change. A lot of you that are listening to my voice, a lot of you are wondering, where can you get involved? What can you do? What's the solution? Well, here's the solution here, folks. Here's a living, breathing, walking, talking solution who's done the work. The amount of money this guy has spent getting this work done, over $1 million out of his own pocket, and then helping and giving away information for free for people who are struggling with their mortgages, it's invaluable. You can't take Greg's work and bring it to a lawyer. He wouldn't know what to do with it. He would not even know what he's looking at. But this is plutonium-grade information that can bring down the whole entire scheme. And that's why, folks, when Greg says there are people that are becoming aware of what he's doing, this is what he means. Because let's be honest here, and Greg, we have a break coming up, but we'll continue on the other end. But one thing I want to say before the break happens, Greg's not up here telling you folks about, he's been abducted by aliens and probed. He's not telling you that he saw Bigfoot in the backwater woods when he was duck hunting. He is telling you that the very thing that you folks have invested your entire lives in, a home with a white picket fence and 2.5 kids, that is about to be shredded and eviscerated. It's on the verge. You're on the verge of losing it. And that's the thing that we're trying to detail here, folks. And when we come back in the later half of the show, Greg is going to go into some of that detail as to the mortgages and its tie-in with the stocks, because this is where they're conning you. Remember, since 1913, the Fed has been here primarily, and its only mission has been to extract the wealth of the United States and its people. And they have so far been very, very successful at doing that. But these are men that we are facing. Most of them are. Some of them are questionable and of dubious genetics. I'll get into that in another broadcast. But these are flesh and blood. These are individuals that bleed. They're not that much smarter than you. They're really not. Don't give them a godlike persona. Don't feel that they're so out of reach. Don't think that you cannot affect change. They want you to feel hopeless and helpless. But the research, all the information that guys like Greg are doing, and I'm going to be honest with you, Greg's the only one. You know, somebody once told me, well, you know, this guy named Bix Weir, he's kind of highlighted some of the stuff with the DTCC. It's not even close. Not even close. That's kindergarten milk compared to the steak potatoes that Greg has. Folks, this is the Guerrilla Economist. Alongside my guest, Greg Moore. Be right back after this message.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry. See how the trouble you've started?
Join us here on Revolution Radio, Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern on Studio B, for a politician, patriot, social savant, businessman, former investment banker, and Veterans Today columnist, Mike Harris. Listen to Mike as he exposes the corruption, sedition, and terrorism within our own government. He knows our system is flawed and that obstruction of justice is all too commonplace. His show, Short End of the Stick, pokes at this corruption with eloquent style. That's Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Studio B for the Short End of the Stick with the man who should have been elected governor of Arizona, Mike Harris.
That's right here on Revolution Radio.
I gotta know the truth, Charlie.
This is Stu Webb, federal whistleblower, the new host of Veterans Today Radio News Reports, Monday right here on Revolution Radio. My guests are writers and contributors to VeteransToday.com, the #1 alternative media magazine in the world and the true voice of the world's clandestine community. We will be discussing recent articles that deal with government corruption, politics, military, Illuminati, and world events that affect your lives and what you can do to change the direction of America. So tune in to the Veterans Today Radio News Reports every Monday evening from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on Studio B here on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Thank you.
Coverage? Oh, you mean them little root weevils that crawl around popping up cameras in your face?
Those root weevils write history.
You have a choice, whether to be a madman or a bold genius. What's the difference? A madman is somebody who does the same action over and over and over for an unknown destiny. A bold genius is somebody who does the same action over and over and over again for a known destiny. That is why fortune always favors the bold. True titans of our times and of the past, who are bent on making most of their opportunities in life, are too busy to bother with luck. Luck is the good fortune you determine for yourself. So find the strength, have the knowledge, summon up the courage to accomplish and see that your dreams are limitless. Your dreams are the fabric that binds all of us together. Rise up! Rise up like fire! Ascend the ladder of your dreams. We choose to rise, not fall. We choose to live, not die. Shift to your triumph. Today, you shift to your triumph. And carry your dreams forward until your life is the capital of triumph. I believe in you. And I know you can do whatever you want. You have an unlimited potential. This moment, this second, your life is an Olympian sunrise. This is your time.
This is your time. Right here at revolutionradio.com. To rise up and make the difference. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Listener supported 100%.
Who are we? Where do we come from? Are there other humans in our Milky Way galaxy? What is our real history? What happens after we die? Or what created our universe? What is the purpose of our life? What evolutionary steps do human societies go through? Who built the ancient monolithic sites found all over the Earth? How do the extraterrestrials travel from star to star system with almost no time passing? Ohio Exopolitics is on at 8-10 p.m. Eastern on Revolution Radio. Join Mark Snyder as he interviews a myriad of excellent guests each Saturday night on Revolution Radio.
At freedomslips.com.
I have worked with the CIA, NSA, Templars, and Bilderbergers. Now I work for you. My show will disclose secrets, science, and esoteric knowledge. Join me, Stephen D. Kelly, for 2 hours every Thursday night at 10 o'clock Eastern Time on freedomslips.com, Revolution Radio, Studio A. You can also listen to previous shows by going to youtube.com/Free Revolution Radio.
Enjoy your extra big-ass fries.
You didn't give me no fries. I got an empty box.
Would you like another extra big-ass fries?
I said I didn't get any.
Thank you. Your account has been charged. Your balance is 0. Please come back when you can afford to make a purchase.
No.
I'm sorry you're having
Come
trouble.
on. My kids are starving.
Thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio. Here at Revolution Radio, we believe in freedom of ideas, freedom of speech, but above all, we believe in freedom of existence through self-reliance. This station is 100% listener-supported, and as a fundraising promotion, I have a kick-ass free gift for a $100 donation. 35,000 seeds. 25 years in the freezer. Long-term storable, 54 different varieties. So if food prices go crazy, the shit hits the fan, or if you just want to save tons of money every year by creating your own food like I do, grab our Seed Pack Special. Just look for the banner on the homepage at freedomslips.com. Don't be a statistic. Don't be part of the problem. Be part of the solution. We need, as humans, to start taking care of ourselves and not depending on the megacorps to provide unhealthy, nasty food. Included in this package is also a DVD with 900 survival and off-grid living documents and the offline home canning how to do everything website all on the DVD. So when you're growing all that food, you know how to can it, store it, preserve it, etc. with all these documents. So thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I hope that you will pick up this package and start learning to be free. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps and freedom is one seed that needs to be planted.
What we do in life, it goes in eternity.
Revolution Radio. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
All right, folks, this is V, the Guerrilla Economist, flying wild weasel missions low to the earth with my wingman, Greg Morse. And we are absolutely shredding some paradigms here and laying waste to some disinfo that's out there. That being said, I just want to remind you folks that we are listener supported, and I can't tell you how important that is. You know, programs such as mine and many of the other programs that are on this awesome station are here because folks like you are supporting us. So when you get a chance, please click that donate button that's on the website as well as that's in the chat room. Also, there's the support link that you can get us on. It's freedomslips.com/support. You can this way you can go ahead and support us. It's important because unlike other stations, you don't have an infomercial popping up every 4 to 5 minutes, and it's ridiculous. I mean, let's be honest here, folks. We've listened to 3-hour radio shows where it's literally like 90 minutes of actual talking, and the rest is all infomercials, and then the host is pitching some sort of a newfangled potion or a pill or a lotion. I mean, who wants that? But here on Freedom Slips, it's just you and it's basically us and you guys. That's it. And any of the guests that we have on, we just rock and roll, and we have a great time, and we don't have to worry about any kind of breaks or anything like that, except for the 2 breaks that we have. So that being said, folks, we have Greg Morse back on. Greg, welcome back, sir, and continue what you're about to say.
Thank you, sir. Well, in the segue going to the commercial, you said, let's talk about some of the facts. Let's do that. The first thing that everybody needs to understand is that a lot of it, we don't have it all up. We're basically a 2-man band. We're not professional IT people. One of us is. I'm not. And we're getting more of it up all the time. But if you desire, you can access our website at saveourfamilyandhome.com. Saveourfamilyandhome.com. You can go to the download button, and you can download all kinds for free. You can download all kinds of evidence. I have written an introduction letter to all the visitors to the site, explaining to them what we're attempting to do. If they want to participate, they can. If they don't have to, and they still get all the information that we put up there for free. The whistleblower document is the one that, so-named whistleblower document that we filed back in April of this year. I would strongly urge for those of your listeners, who want to learn all of the facts, at least 95% of them, behind this story that we don't have time in a radio show construct format to cover, they can go download that 287-page document that I wrote, every word. So I either get the credit or the criticism, but it's my work. And it's about 400 hours of work to put that together, and people can get a tremendous amount of information plus all of these supporting evidence documents that go along with it. Now, the first thing that we need to do is we need to tell people you've got to open your mind and understand that this was not a micro, non-anomalous event. This was a macro event. It was a pre-engineered RICO fraud construct from the get-go, and it was controlled both directly and indirectly by a joint venture between the U.S. government, the Treasury, the Fed, and the DTCC at 55 Water Street. Here's why. Everyone is probably aware of the Project for a New American Century and the plan of Agenda 21. Agenda 21 is nothing more than an asymmetric warfare tactic, the end result of which is designed to take your land, your money, and your asset from you, rendering you an indentured servant. We began to get into peonage, Peonage. That is a God-given, constitutionally protected right, which is at the heart of this entire issue. We are the only case that we're aware of that has used peonage as a cornerstone in the case. Now, why is that important? It's because if you don't open your mind and understand that this is not a local corner 7-Eleven, this is a major global corporate construct, you'll never get it. You'll never understand it. So everyone needs to open their peripheral vision and their mind to be able to understand that this entire mortgage fraud was designed in concert with the feds when they changed laws and allowed banks to become gambling institutions. Second, Wall Street, basically, Seed & Company, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of the DTCC, owns all of the real stock for every single publicly traded and publicly funded company, bond, or government in the nation. So what has happened here is that the government, in concert with Wall Street, they established three entities that are as their implementation arm, which are referred to as GSEs, government-sponsored enterprises. Those are Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and Ginnie Mae. Now, everyone knows that they don't understand, if they're honest, what a GSE is. What it is a government institution masquerading as a private corporation. It's like saying you're pregnant, but you're not pregnant. There's no abject physics that will allow you to be pregnant and not pregnant. So you have to get beyond that point and understand that these agencies are agencies of the federal government that answer to the Fed. Second, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are still in conservatorship, which is a fancy word for bankruptcy. And their conservator is another government agency to whom they answer. And I'm not going to throw all the acronyms out, V, because the names get to be boggling to people, so I'm just going to try to keep it simple. There are, at best count, something in excess of 70 million mortgages in this nation. Now, if you assume you have, the most recent number I think is like 2.3 kids in each family, and you assume that most of those mortgages represent a home that is occupied by a family, that's 4.3. Mom, dad, and 2.3 kids, so call it 4. Well, 70 million times 4 is 280 million people out of a slightly over 300 million population. So what that means is that what you said could not be more accurate, and that is that this crisis, either directly or indirectly, affects the great majority of the people in this nation. Now, what happened was they set this system up such that they could, number one, entice you into taking a mortgage which previously you had been unable to qualify for. Number two, they fleeced you with fees, extraordinary loan terms to get as much cash from you as possible. Number three, they broke the chains of title in every one of the 50 states of the Union, such that your ownership of that home could never be perfected. That is why in April of 2011, after 3 years of research, I became the plaintiff in my lawsuit. I never missed a payment, was never late. This was not a foreclosure defense. It is the only case that we're aware of that is a case based on one thing, and that's massive RICO mortgage fraud. Now, when I filed the case, I pled, and you can read it online. The original complaint is on SaveOurFamilyandHome.com. And what we explained in that complaint was this. Because the chain of title is broken, and since fraud eviscerates anything else pertinent to that deed of trust, which is a trust contract, it's not just a money lending contract. It is a trust agreement contract. That the way this fraud was set up was that you, the unknowing home buyer, would sacrifice, work your hiney off to make all your mortgage payments for one expectation. At the end of that, let's say in my case 30 years, that's 360 payments, one a month. That at the end of that period, you would send in your last payment, the check would clear. What would you expect to get within 60 days, according to the contract, after the last payment was paid and the money cleared? You would expect to get a general warranty deed, different from a deed of trust, in the state of Texas at least, that says you own that house free and clear, and you would get back the original blue ink signed promissory note, stamped in red and blue, paid in full, notarized and signed, paid in full, executed by an appropriately and duly legally authorized signatory on whose signature you could depend. Then number 3, you would see a filing made in the county recorder's office, regardless of the state you're in, which said that on this date, your note was paid for and the previous lien holder indicated that that lien had been satisfied and you were the free and clear owner. That's never going to happen. That's called peonage. When you are defrauded into thinking that over a long period of time, you make a lot of payments and there is a piece of candy at the end of that golden trail, and you get to the end of that trail and there is no candy, that is called peonage. Peonage means indentured servitude. Some people confuse it and call it slavery. That is not technically accurate, but it emotionally certainly is reasonably accurate, because you have been working and trading your life's sweat and skill to invest money in something that you are led to believe you are buying, when in fact you are not buying it. You are giving money away to an entity that likely, in most cases, doesn't even own, nor did they ever fund at closing, which that one act breaches the contract, the actual lender on your property. Now, what that means is that they set this system up such that the banks, which all have a holding company, under federal law, your local corner Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Citibank, JP Morgan, franchise bank building where you go to deposit checks and cash checks, cannot go into the open market and sell stock. They have to do that through their holding companies. So what happened was that these banks, through their holding companies, all simultaneously conducted 2 operations. One, most of them, and we've documented it profusely, were the major controlling stock-holding owners of that little company everybody's aware of called Mortgage Electronic Registration Systems, Inc., which has broken the chain of title on millions of mortgages. Secondly, what they were doing is the holding companies, were being fed the legal documentation which represented theoretically, only not accurately, the ownership rights under their half of the trust contract agreement onto their balance sheet saying these are our assets. Then what they would do is they would sell through their holding companies on Wall Street. They would sell those fake shares to raise money, and when that happened, the ownership of that stock then went through DTCC and resided with Seed and Company, and the bank doesn't even own the note. Now, what happened was that when they decided it was time, because all criminals, if you study the criminal mind, criminology will teach you that every good criminal is a smart human being. They may be satanically or evilly motivated, but they're pretty smart. And one thing they do know is that at some point they're going to get caught. So they make a determination that we're going to bleed this system for as much money and land ownership as we can, because they're being directed by the Fed, by the government, through the GSEs to implement this situation. Why do I bring the GSEs up? It's because of those 70 million mortgages, guess who on the record claims that they own the majority of those? Fannie Mae.
Perfect.
That's a key point that everybody must keep straight in their mind if this huge puzzle is to become clear at all. When Fannie Mae is in bankruptcy and they're being controlled by the federal government, simultaneously they are representing, just as in my case, that they own the promissory note on my home, but not the mortgage or the deed of trust, depending upon which state you're in. Some states call it deed of trust, some call it mortgage, same thing. They don't own the mortgage. They're telling you right up front that your deed of trust has been separated from the promissory note, and under Carpenter v. Longden, supported by Judge McBride's case in Texas a year and a half ago, and a jillion other cases, your promissory note and your deed of trust are both nullities and do not apply. Now, if your listeners don't stand up and fight that, you by default are letting the bad guy win. Because the only way you can prove that is to take the bad guy into court and prove that they have destroyed your deed of trust and promissory note and have made you an unknowing victim of peonage. Now, what would happen is that these massive numbers of mortgages would be condensed, combined, aggregated into a thing called a REMIC, R-E-M-I-C. That's an acronym for Real Estate Mortgage Investment Conduit. People say it's an entity. No, it's not. This is the level V, and I'm going to take a breath and let you kind of clarify some of my rambling, but we've got to make sure, in my heart, we've got to make sure that people understand the key most important thing, and I would respectfully request you clarify this. You're better at it than I am. People have got to understand the difference between theory and provable fact so that they can understand how they have been victimized. Would you be willing to address that for me a second? Give me a chance to take a breath.
Absolutely, Greg. You know, folks, what Greg's talking about is this, okay? Most of you don't realize that when you purchase a home, here you are, you're being victimized. What does he mean by that? What do I mean by that? Here's what I'm going to clarify for you guys. You're being victimized in the sense, the theory is that you are buying a home. You're buying a quote-unquote investment that at the end of the term of that mortgage, you are to be given a deed of ownership stating that this is something that you've been working for, you've been putting your blood, sweat, and tears into, the American dream, quote-unquote. And what in reality is you're toiling away for a piece of property that you will never own, and that is the fact. It is very important that you folks understand the imaginary illusion world, the marketing hype from Madison Avenue that has stated that you need to, as an American, go to college, graduate, get a dead-end job, work your bones to the ground, work your fingers to the bone, and then go ahead and buy a piece of property that you cannot afford, a home to live in, and then pay that darn thing off for the next 30-some-odd years and slave away, and then in your golden years you have something left over. That's the marketing hype. The reality is you are so much an indentured servant, you're so much a slave to the system in such a way that you can never really own anything. You don't own your home. And just on a mortgage standpoint, you can't own it. Even if you paid your mortgage off, let's just say you've got a mortgage and you got your mortgage in like 2001, 2003, 2005, I mean, before Morse came on the scene, and you paid your mortgage off. Even then, folks, don't pay your property tax and see what happens. See what happens. You'll find out who owns what very quickly. And also, Greg, if you want to get into it as well, I mean, we're reaching the halfway point over here, but if you can get into the stocks, if you can really delve into this monster called the DTCC and the DTC and Seed & Company, I think it's pretty critical here. And most people don't know the relationships, Greg, between the DTC and the DTC, the DTCC, and Seed & Company, and how that pertains to not just mortgages, but every single security on every single exchange here in the United States. And one last thing I'd like to tell everybody is this. We are in a race, okay? This is why you need to get involved, okay? We are in a race. Mathematically, okay, we're at the point that you cannot stop the collapse. No way in hell. You can't stop it. But if you're involved, you can greatly mitigate what will occur, because I'll be honest with you, this system is so toxic it has to collapse. It has to be purged in order to cleanse itself of all the toxicity that's been built up in it. But if you are involved, folks, it will not be the horrific collapse with the tremendous amount of loss of life that will occur if you're not involved. If you are involved, you can mitigate this collapse, and we will have a normal economic reset. It will be painful, but we will come out of it on the other end, and those who are involved, those who prepare themselves for this, will be in a better position than those who are not. And that is why this bit of information that Greg's talking about is important. We are in a race. They are racing to collapse the system. And people like Greg and myself and all the other hosts and all the other individuals that are on the front line reporting these bits of information and letting you folks know this, we're in a race trying to warn you guys to get involved so we can mitigate some of the harm and danger that's involved typically with an economic collapse. Greg, do you want to touch base real quick on the stock stuff?
Absolutely. Here is the proof for your listeners that what we are saying is the truth. And the glaring state, only because of the millions of examples, is Florida. What people are finding is that when they go to pay off their note, they don't get the clear deed of trust, deed of ownership, and they don't get their promissory note. They get what's called a lost note certificate or a lost note affidavit, depending upon the state in which you live. That document is not legally perfectible. It does not, under the laws of the states, represent clear ownership to your property. And what it is, and this leads right into DTCC, it is a statement by the supposed lender telling you that for some reason they've lost all your documentation. And since they can't regenerate it legally, they have to give you an alternative document called a lost note affidavit or a lost note certificate. The second point is people say, okay, I want to get involved. All I can tell you is go to our website, read what it has to say, and contact me. And I'll let it go at that, and we can talk about it, because there are some very specific ways that we can address this impending train wreck. Now, what happened was, without going into any more detail about the various entities of which there are hundreds involved, it was all intended to end up through the illegal formation and transfer of ownership through illegal fraudulent sales of the certificates of ownership that represent the assets in the real estate mortgage investment conduit. Each of those remit classifications represent the legal choosing of a federal income tax exemption under, again, the IRS code. We all have to pay taxes. The bad guys get patted on the back. They get big bonuses. They don't have to pay anything. The trust aggregates all of your mortgages. Now, under their trust agreement, they have an obligation, since they are a trustee to the trust, just as you, the homeowner, are a trustee to your trust, you have obligations, which is to maintain the property and pay your bills. Their obligation is to protect the legal integrity of your deed of trust and your promissory note. They are supposed to keep those documents in bomb-proof, fire-proof, flood-proof, theft-proof safes, and they're all supposed to be stored on Normandale Avenue in Minneapolis, Minnesota, in the possession of, guess who? Wells Fargo. Now, Wells Fargo just happens, in my last research, to have paid hundreds of millions of dollars for agreeing and admitting in public court to federal criminal fraud and conspiracy to launder drug money from the Mexican cartels. Go study it. It's all over the planet. Now,
that is true.
Okay, it's absolutely true. It's on the court record. Now, that very entity who admitted, just like J.P. Morgan and Bank of America and everybody else is getting away under Holder's watch, that, yeah, we admit to criminal fraud, but if we give you what seems to be to the American public enough money to satisfy them that somebody is getting punitively penalized, we won't criminally prosecute anybody and send them to jail. Do you, as the American citizen, do you for 1 second believe that? If you went out and laundered drug money or hurt somebody or stole their property, do you think you could write them a check and they would not prosecute you? The answer is absolutely not. So that proves that what we are saying in a constellational sense is absolutely spot on. Do we have all the records? No. Why? Because the federal government has allowed those very same entities, DTC, C&C, to operate under law passed by Congress, signed by the president into law as what's called an SRO, a self-regulating organization. It means that the entirety of Wall Street is owned. All of the exchanges, all of the rules, all of the obligations that are put upon the people who are participants in Wall Street, traders, etc., it's all controlled by the Depository Trust Clearing Corporation at 55 Water Street. When stocks are sold, the REMIC collects all of these home mortgages. They then create what's called a REMIC certificate. That certificate is then sold through Wall Street. The ownership of those original certificates that actually have true equity value are, according to the records, all documented, goes directly to Seed and Company. CEDE and Company. Isn't it interesting that there's only one filing for that company in Delaware, and then it disappears off the radar screen, but it's in every one of your stock purchase contracts, every one of your trust agreements on your mortgages, and Seed and Company is directly controlled out of the City of London. Now, you will also find, this is the most scary part, the DTCC is the largest, wealthiest, and most powerful seated member of the Federal Reserve.
Yep, absolutely true.
Everybody knows that a corporate entity is controlled by its stockholders, not by the people sitting on the board. Because if you're a board member sitting on the board of a company and you are not in agreement with the stockholder that put you there, you get relieved of duty, at least. So what happens here is that the Remics, of which there have been thousands, have sold their certificates into the ownership of Seed & Company. Seed & Company being controlled by the City of London, the Federal Reserve being controlled directly by its chief stockholder and seated member being the DTCC, which is also controlled by and is a part of the City of London. It means that all of your properties are owned by that criminal cabal. That is why, a year and a half or so ago, the largest bankruptcy in the history of the United States was filed in the New York Federal Southern District Bankruptcy Court in the court of Judge Martin Glenn, and it's referred to as RESCAP, R-E-S-C-A-P. It's an acronym for Residential Capital. That particular bankruptcy, as I wrote, and you can go read my internet piece that I put out that went viral back in 2010, 4 years before the filing of the bankruptcy. Based on what I knew then, in fact, I made some guesses, some prophecies, whatever you want to call them, as to what the end game was. And the end game is that all of these lending institutions will commit under the direction of DTCC and Seed. They will conduct as many of these fraudulent transactions as they can until they think it's time to bail. When they bail, they file bankruptcy. And you can go to my website, saveourfamilyandhome.com. You can download the 500 plus page pleading file. Here's the question, V. When in the history of the United States has 52 corporate entities all filed bankruptcy on the same complaint, on the same day, in the same court, and pled the reasons for bankruptcy, all as being the same?
Never, never, ever, ever.
Never has happened. So my prophecy was that they're going to run a trial beta bankruptcy to see what kind of public reaction they're going to generate. Because what Martin Glenn has done, and we're right on the DTCC track. We can't get it all out because of time constraint. But what happened was the bankrupt petitioners asked the court, you go read it on the docket, they asked the court to allow them to do two things. And that was before the trustees, at least one for each bank. Since they were all, for the first time, proven, we had been prophesying it for years, every one of those 51 banks, RESCAP's number one, they were all hydras of RESCAP. They were all owned and controlled by RESCAP.
Unbelievable. And
when you read the names, for those of you listening, the odds are likely, you'll read one or more names that you have heard about in your area, GMAC, Homecomings Financial, et cetera, in your area, wherever you live, whatever state and town you live in, and you're going to have to look yourself in the mirror and admit that when you heard these companies advertising years ago, you had the impression, just as I did, that they were standalone entities promoting their own services, when in fact, they were nothing more than a hydra of a bigger company that was implementing the fraudulent strategy. So what happens here is that they file bankruptcy. They ask the court, which is totally anomalous, to allow them to sell their remaining assets before the trustees have even evaluated anything about the bankruptcy case. And when they sell them, they ask the court for litigation protection from the buyers. In other words, when one of the 52 were to sell their mortgage portfolio, although it was paper, fraud, worth nothing except your land. See, they don't care about your sticks and bricks house. They want your land. Because the land has permanent value and political control. They don't care about the paint on your house and the things you and I care about. They asked the court and were given. Martin Glynn did this. He gave post-bankruptcy litigation protection to the two companies that bought all of these mortgages. It's over $500 billion worth. And the two entities were Berkshire Hathaway, owned totally and controlled totally by who? Warren Buffett.
Boom.
And Ocwen, OCWEN, loan servicing out of India. They bought these mortgages for about 5 cents on the dollar. All of those documents are transferred, and then they cannot be deposed. They cannot be sued. They cannot be issued discovery orders. You cannot order a federal marshal to deliver a federal subpoena to them because they hold up Judge Martin Glynn's ruling that says these owners are protected by the bankruptcy court from being sued. So whatever hope you had of being able to prove your standing that you have been defrauded, at the end of the bankruptcy, you're done. Because the criminals that bought the mortgages, we have now found, were involved earlier on in the process as instigating the mortgages. So what does that mean? It means that Berkshire, through all of its own subsidiaries, same thing with Ocwen, they got people into bad mortgages. Now, stop. At that point, what does that mean from a legal litigation perspective at that juncture? It means that if the fraud is ever uncovered, those entities could be sued for fraud, correct?
Absolutely.
However, when they come in on the back end of the RICO Ponzi scheme and they buy the very same paper that they 10 years before or 8 years before, whatever it is, instigated and got you, the homeowner, to sign on the bottom line, putting you into the corporate state of contracts, they just bought for 5 cents on the dollar, which cost them nothing because the 5 cents that they're using came from you because they defrauded you 6, 8, 10 years prior. They have just bought themselves legal protection, which precludes them from being sued for the initial fraud they conducted when they instigated the mortgages, and by the court order, they are not liable for lawsuit. Now, during this entire process, through the DTCC, guess who on the planet is the largest commodities trader for residential mortgage-backed securities and commercial mortgage-backed securities? It's DTCC. They own and control every single stock exchange of every type on Wall Street.
So, Greg, let me get this straight here. So basically what you're saying is that the DTCC evolved from its historical role as a simple record keeper into actually being a central counterparty for every single securities and derivative fraud imaginable.
That's exactly correct. And it's all on the legal public record. And if you go to our website, you can see a lot of that documentation. You see, people don't understand when they go to their local stockbroker, which is no different at all. It's a commodity. Call it whatever you will. Stockbrokers love to add all this technically rhetorical jargon to try to give different names to things. It's all a commodity. Everything. Whether it's corn, money, gold, silver, mortgages, it's all a commodity. It's the basis for getting two people to bet. And the stock market, if you go to about 3 or 4 of the largest business schools in the nation, which I have done, that's my background, you will find that one of their adages is that for you to be successful in the stock market, you have to be able to identify and win the trust of a fool bigger than you. Because what that means is you're a fool to play, and to be able to sell for a profit what you just foolishly bought, you got to buy a fool that you can convince to be a bigger fool than you. And
well said.
But is that not true to you?
You're exactly right, brother. I remember my days as a commodity broker, and that's one of my biggest problems I had early on. It was simply that. I mean, we're not performance-based. It's all about volume. So you got to find the next sucker.
You got to find a sucker to pawn off the junk you just bought. So what happens here is that the trusts, and this was the basis for my Securities and Exchange Commission and IRS whistleblower package, and it will be, I think, of interest. I know I'm watching the time, but I think this will be of interest because we're only hitting the very top of the white caps here because we don't have time. You know how many hours I've spent with other folks on this issue, like 4 3-hour shows, and we're still digging through it. Here's the point. These mortgages were sold into slavery. They're now destroying the documents through the ResCap bankruptcy. You will see, in my estimation, my humble opinion, many more bankruptcies to follow. Now, we've caught the judges violating the 4 tenets which give us the ability to go after them for impeachment. That is diminished mental capacity, judicial malfeasance, judicial prejudice, and judicial bias. We have caught them by their own employees admitting it to us that they have had behind my back ex parte discussions, that they're working in collusion with the law firms to keep this stuff from coming out. That's why my appeals have been accepted. They're doing everything they can to shut us up because here's what happens. Remember that all the documentation at the day of your closing went through Morse, which is what? It's a non-legal, non-state embraced and endorsed electronic book entry keeping system. That means that all the laws of the state regarding the filing of those documents to protect your ownership, they've all been abrogated. That's why states, like in California, all 168 counties, whatever it was, sued MERS because they had caused hundreds of millions of dollars of damage to the state government. The courts had basically shut them down. Number 2, MERS then takes that information and transfers it to Fannie Mae. Fannie Mae now has it, and they will tell you to go take a long walk off a short pier with concrete shoes for asking any questions. When the documents got to that point, the ownership had already been transferred through the DTCC to Seed, which passes it directly to the City of London. Why do we know that? Because every single public bank, that means J.P. Morgan, Bank of America, Citi, Chase, Wells Fargo, all of them, their stock is likewise owned by Seed & Company. So if you think you own a piece of the original equity stock, gold, fancy paper, beige color, gold embossed, stamped, raised stamp, signed in blue ink, certificated to be true, you don't. Just go ask your broker, say you got 72 hours to give me my stock, call us back and let you know what their responses were. You have bought what is called beneficial ownership rights in the street name stock, which is nothing more than a marketing rhetorical construct to facilitate marketing and sale of that stock. Because the 1 or 2 stock certificates based upon the size of the issue is already owned and is safely kept by Seed & Company. So that means that the 12 Fed Reserve banks are controlled by DTCC because the DTCC, through its wholly owned subsidiary seeding company, owns the stock for those dadgum banks. So they are sitting at the Fed table for political purposes to make it look like they're actually doing something. But when the DTCC walks in to that meeting, who do you think gets all the attention? It's the DTCC. So what happens is that they go into the federal government and they claim that because, and they typically took anywhere from 12 to 18 months to do this on every single one we've looked at, which have been hundreds. Normally in the 12 to 15 month range, what would happen is they file what's called an SEC Form 15D. And that form doesn't require an approval, doesn't require any response action, doesn't even require an answer. It's a simple form filled out by the trust, which is notifying the SEC that because their ownership structure has changed and they now have less than 300 owners in that trust, they now are electing a REMIC, federal income tax exemption, and we no longer have to file any reports with you on a quarterly basis. We don't have to tell you anything about us, where we're located, what we do, and we certainly don't have to give you any financials. They go into the black.
Yep, that's unbelievable, Greg. It's totally unbelievable. You know, one of the things, and we're coming down to the wire here. I just want to say this real quickly. With the Fed allowing all this stuff to happen, okay, basically what's been happening is that you have the DTCC becoming an absolute affiliate of the entire securities and banking structure, without any sort of FDIC membership requirements, without any sort of cross guarantees, without any sort of approval that is needed for such an organization like this to exist. So what happens is when you have an organization like the DTCC doing this level of fraud and affecting this much of the marketplace in terms of owning all the real stocks and whatnot, Greg, the question is that I would ask on behalf of the audience here is, can because of the position of the DTCC and all the stocks that it has, is there any way that that the Fed or the government or anybody could offload the DTCC or remove it without causing the total and complete collapse of the entire Western banking system?
That's a really salient question. All I can do, I'm not God, I'm not a prophet. All I can do is give you my gut opinion. They have been committing the largest income tax fraud in recorded history.
Correct.
They have been conducting the largest land grab in recorded history.
Correct.
Remember, according to the DTCC website's own performance numbers, they trade over $1 trillion in mortgage-backed securities every month.
It's unbelievable.
If you look at the 2012 U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics and the census, and you can corroborate that with the Fed's numbers, they estimate there to be about $13 trillion worth of residential mortgages in the nation. What does that tell you? Let's just assume that 1 times 12 is 12, and let's assume that for discussion purposes, that 12 and 13 is pretty close to being the same number. That means that the DTCC, while all of us are dying out here, they are continuing their Ponzi scheme, and they are continually selling every year the equivalent of every single mortgage in the nation by month. That means every time another one of those trades takes place in which your mortgage is held by a seeding company, which you can't get to, it means that they are further clouding and destroying, eviscerating, and hiding, intentionally hiding, what really happened to your mortgage. And remember, it's the federal government that is ending up with all of this. Why? Because the federal government cannot operate without the Fed. We have been legally bankrupt since the Emergency Banking Act of 1933. That law has never been repealed, modified, adjudicated, or changed. So we are legally bankrupt. So all those that pontificate, well, we are, we're not, maybe yes, we don't know, we're going to change the Dow and it's going to fix something. It's all hocus pocus, hype, and BS. We are still in bankruptcy as a nation, and the reason is because we gave up our right to print constitutionally legal U.S. dollars. That's just one. There's a million subpoints under that. But that's the key point. We gave that right to the Federal Reserve, which is only controlled for the predominant most part by entities that are not even U.S. citizens. And the people in this country don't seem to care.
Absolutely.
So what is the direct answer to your question? My guess would be that when you have a lot of cancer in the body, it's going to hurt. But if it is a curable kind of cancer, theoretically, you're playing the odds. But if you go through all the treatments and you put up with the hair loss and the chemo and all the stuff they tell you to do, you might very well survive. Do I think it could bring the system down? No question. Do I think it's scary? Not really, and I'll tell you why. Because I think it's better for everybody to know the truth, and let's rebuild a constitutionally legal money system in this country where 1% or less of the entities and the people control the other 99%. I think that number is reasonably accurate. So is it going to hurt? Yes. But we have examples. Iceland and other places, Norway and others, we have examples where the peoples in a nation rose up and said, you are not going to sell us into indentured servitude. We are going to fix this. We're going to identify and prosecute and punish those people who were responsible, and we're going to rebuild our system and get away from this global construct of central banks where we the people don't know anything about who owns and who controls our destiny.
Absolutely. Greg Morse, thank you, Greg, for being on. I'm going to have you back on, and we're going to go deep into this thing in the upcoming broadcast. Folks, that's Greg Morse. You've been listening to me, the Guerrilla Economist, on freedomslips.com. Listener-supported. Click the donate button. And I'll see you everybody next week. And I want to thank, most importantly, my producer, Deacon John, for making this happen and flying by me all the way. Thank you, sir. All have a good night.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We'll be right back after this message.